Dave Russell, code officer.
Don't do it. You getting that sound again?
No, sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Usually I'm known for making feedback.
There you go.
Yeah, okay. All right. This is a process that began a while ago. Years ago, probably 7 years ago, if you count the public benefit determination that Casella and Newsme had to go through in order to get here. But Casella filed an application with DEP for expansion of the Juniper Ridge landfill. And Casella and the state also, the Bureau of General Services, as the landlord, if you will, for the landfill, began that process in July of 2015. They've received their permit for an expansion, and now the ball is in our court to review this. It's up to the planning board to review the expansion of the Juniper Ridge landfill under Chapter 24 of the city's ordinances. I understand each of you has a copy of Chapter 24. There won't be a quiz tonight, but it is something that you will be working with closely over the next several months. It's a more limited review than the Department of Environmental Protection and Board of Environmental Protection conduct. Theirs is more wide-ranging. Ours is limited to what's in Chapter 24. And we're limited by the legislative resolve as to what we can look at. We can't be any more stringent than the state when it comes to engineering reviews of the landfill, the solid waste rules, and such. But we are looking more toward land use issues, police power issues, traffic, fire safety, noise, all those odors, all of those things are in the ordinance. You'll find under Section 2412 a series of criteria that this board will go through to see whether this application meets those standards. So the board's role is to be the impartial reviewer of the application under the ordinance. My role is to guide the board as impartial outside counsel. I am not an advocate for the city. I am not an advocate for the landfill. I'm not an advocate for those who oppose it. I'm an advocate only for the process, to make sure that we all get through the process impartially, fairly, looking at this and applying the ordinance that the city council has adopted to the application. So the end result is going to be a decision by this board. It's either going to be an approval or a denial, or it could be a conditional approval. But that approval would be one, if there is one, that will go through all of the criteria in the ordinance, all of the standard conditions of approval, any additional conditions of approval. And so we'll go through that process of reviewing the criteria. It'll be like many other projects that you see, though. You'll have a public hearing. Well, first there'll be a workshop, and the workshop will be where the applicant presents the application. So you all become familiar with it. That's what you do for subdivisions or site plans, I assume. And then you hold a public hearing where the public is invited to bring its comments to you as well, so that, and then you would deliberate as you would for any other application. You would close the public hearing, conduct your deliberations, go through the criteria, make a decision on each one, and then ultimately a yes or no on the permit. So it's similar to what you do. It's just different in that the subject matter is one that you don't often see. You've seen subdivisions, you've seen site plans, you probably haven't seen too many landfills. And so this is the first time that this board's gone through this ordinance. So it will be an interesting process, but one that we'll try to make sure is both efficient and fair so that everybody has the opportunity to provide comment so that you make the best decision you can based on the information before you. What we thought we'd do tonight, I say we, I've spoken with the city manager, Bill Mayo, and with CEO David Russell. We've talked about doing something this evening with the board that's similar to what happened when we began the process in front of the Board of Environmental Protection. And that is to have a meeting on the process, to try to reduce the number of disputes or issues we might have. If we could agree on what the process is so we all understand it, and we all feel that it's fair, we all can comment on it and make sure that it's appropriate, then we can try to make this as efficient as we can and as fair as we can. So that's why the process tonight really is to understand what it is we're being asked to do and to come up with the ground rules for how this board will approach the application. And then we can set up a schedule and start working our way through the application.
Mr. Katsifides, would you care to comment on the responsibilities under the city's ordinance for planning board members and where we should limit these discussions of this application regarding, like, for instance, ex parte communications?
Sure.
Just to, again, maybe you had already planned on.
No, but that's a fair question. This is just like any other land use application that you might have before you, in that you are sitting as a quasi-judicial or administrative body. There's an ordinance that's been adopted, just like your subdivision ordinance, just like your site plan ordinance, just like your zoning ordinance in general. And these folks are coming in before you, NewsMe, Casella, Bureau of General Services, with an application. And so you're going to be asked to make a decision on that application as to whether to grant it or deny it or grant it with conditions. And so just like any other land use application, you will hear testimony, you will receive documents. Everything that you receive, whether it's written, oral, should be in this meeting. That way everybody can see it, read it, respond to it. You should not be having any discussions about the merits of this application outside of this room. You can receive materials at home to review, certainly, like you do any application. When you get the board packet and you take a look at what's coming up, you look at the agenda and review the materials. That's fine, but no discussions with each other or with members of the public should occur outside of the public meeting, because that's an ex parte communication. People don't know what's discussed, and there's always the concern that you might base your decision on something that no one else was aware of. We want to make sure that your decision is fair, impartial, and based upon the material that's presented to you in this application.
Thank you.
One word of caution, you're each being given an iPad tonight that has materials, and that should be a great help. I understand that, 7,000 pages or so, if this were going to be in printed form, we'd each be carrying a little wagon around with the 7,000 pages, I'm afraid. So this will make life a lot easier. What it also will help, because it will have internet connectivity, is that if more materials are received, and David has those, or comments are received from the public, and they have to be distributed before a meeting, they can be distributed to you that way by email and put onto the iPad. Here's a warning. An ex parte communication can happen when you bump into someone at Hannaford, for example, saying, I hate that project, let me tell you why, or I love that project, let me tell you why. Well, it can also happen by an email. So let's be careful. Email is a great tool. David can get the agenda to you, he can get the materials that have just been received to you, but you shouldn't use it either to communicate with the public for, about the substance of a matter before you, or with each other. Because if you communicate with each other, it's the same thing as if you were to pick up the phone or bump into each other at aisle 5 at Hannaford or whatever. It's a meeting. And we shouldn't be having meetings unless there's public notice, public opportunity to be heard, and it's here. Unless it's a site visit. And then everyone will have notice of that too. So does that all make sense?
Thank you. Thank you. It's a reminder. We all know this. But
I understand. But really it's all, and that's why, in part, the City Council decided that it was appropriate for the Planning Board to hear this this sort of application. It's much like what you do already. And so it's not a different role, it's really not different responsibilities. It's just a different ordinance and slightly different substance, but the process is very much the same. The legal considerations are very much the same.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to be reminded of what we already know.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So with that, maybe this would be a good time, I'm looking at Mr. Doyle, for Mr. Labby to present his tutorial on the iPad, if that seems appropriate.
Yes. While you were talking, Mike Barton from the Bureau of General Services, the state landfill manager, arrived, so.
So the landlord is present.
Let me just make sure that light's on.
I can sit over there, that's okay. It doesn't feel
Wherever you want to go,
necessary.
that's on. You're supposed to eat it after you
I
come
like
out.
to stand though. My wife gets mad at me because I pace when I talk on the phone, and she says, "Stop walking around the house." Of course, I never listen. How you guys doing tonight? My name is Jeremy. I'm the environmental manager for Juniper Ridge and Pine Tree landfills. My responsibilities include oversight of engineering and compliance with environmental. It's really hot. Environmental policies, our licenses, also the day-to-day procedures, as well as maintaining relationships with the DEP and the EPA and other regulatory bodies. So I'm going to run you through a little bit about an iPad. I don't know how many of you guys have experience using an iPad, so I'm going to start right from the beginning, and for some of you who have one and can just fly through it, I'm going to show you where the power button is, everything like that, and I apologize for those of you who already know it. I just want to make sure that everybody can get their way through it from start to finish. So if you grab your iPads in a blue case, just like this, just put it aside for a second and grab your box. You can open the box up. I couldn't put the iPad back in the box when you get the case. So there's a little card in there, a placard that's laminated. You can put that aside for now. Inside the box, you'll see a charger. So there's a little little white charger, right? And then a charging cable. And that's what you need to plug it in to the wall to charge it. So for those of you who have any kind of phone, it's the same kind of charger. So it's right in there. You could take that little laminated. You don't have one in yours? Are you serious?
Sure.
Well, I got a spare, so I'll get you one after.
Will my charger that I use for my phone work?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I don't even know how that one walked away.
Oh, yeah.
It got by quality control.
Apparently. That's interesting. All right. I guess the code enforcement officer doesn't need a charger, so my apologies for that.
That's okay.
So, go ahead and grab your iPads and open them up. The power button, for those of you who don't know, is right on the top corner. You can see it right here. So go ahead and you can flip it right open. This case is like a. You got it. There you go. So you can set it like this on the case if you want to. Right there. Some of you guys already got it. You can also set it vertically. You can flip it if you like to view things better this way. You can flip your iPad 90 degrees if you want, or you can just have it flat. It's your choice. So did you find the power button? Everybody find the power button? Okay, good to go. Right on the top corner here. Yeah, right there. There you go. All right, so hit the power button until the little Apple symbol comes up. And then you get your passcode. There it says to put in a passcode. You guys have that? Let me, I can't show you how to do that on here because it doesn't hook up until we're connected, so.
I've already got a screensaver.
Okay. Yep, hit the home button. Hit it again. Okay, and enter the passcode I just gave you. As long as you guys, again, if your screen goes black, go ahead and hit the home button. See, some of you guys are already in. All right.
How many zeros was it?
As many as it takes to fill it up.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, so for those of you who are in, everybody in now? Okay. So you should see my screen now. So your screen should look just like this. Everybody get that screen? Okay, so a little bit of a background on iPads. There's different apps. We mentioned, Mr. Cassiophyx has mentioned Safari is the Internet Explorer button, right? And so mine doesn't actually have my mail app on the main screen, but yours does too. There's something that says mail right next to it if you want to set up an email account on there so you can get those emails. There's a notes where you can keep notes if you want to keep your notes. There's a reminders. section. There's a calendar if you want to use that. If you click on contacts, you'll see that mine's different because I got extra contacts in there, but there's should be three contacts in there, right? Two of them matter. One of them's Mr. Russell's contact information in case you need to get in touch with him. Some of them, and then there's another one that's my contact info. And again, I'm available just for technical questions regarding, I can't discuss the actual application, but if you're having problems with the iPad not working or not charging, or you've lost a charger or something like that happens, feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you what I can to make sure the iPad works. And that's really all I'm available for, but I can definitely help you if you're having any technical issues with the iPad. Okay, so moving on to the heart of the matter. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a program it's a little blue symbol that says PDF. That's the app we're going to be using. It says Foxit PDF. So we go ahead and hit that button, and it should bring this right up for you. Everybody get the same screen as I do? Okay, so this is the application. There's 3 documents in the application. If you grab your little laminated card that you got with you, that is the bookmarks document. So go ahead and click on the bookmarks, and it'll open up for you. And this is basically the organization of the application. So it shows you the first section is a City of Old Town application. I apologize, it's hard to see on the screen. And it has a table of contents in the different sections. And then App A, B, C, D are the appendices that go along with that application. As I was mentioned, the application is 7,004 pages or something like that. So a full version looks like that. So that's why we're doing it on here. I will give you a word of caution that even on here, these are big files. So don't try to do 300 things at once. You know, take your time moving through it, because you can lock the iPad up if you really, really try to stress it out by doing 6 different things at the same time. So I tend to do that way too often and end up having to restart things. But this is pretty stable as far as systems go, much more stable than a PC. So, all right, so if you hit the back button on the top left side of your screen, there's a little back arrow. Do you see that? Left side of your screen? It brings you back to the 3. Okay, so there's the second one is the JRL expansion City of Old Town application. And the third one is the Appendix D. Now, we were gonna put the application in one big document, but there was too many pages, it was too big. So we pulled out one of the appendices, which is Appendix D, which is 65% of the document. That's like 4,800 pages, just that appendix, right? So when you get inside the application itself, that second one right in the middle, if you're going, well, there's Appendix A, B, C, and then it goes to E, it's because we split it out because it wouldn't fit in there. So there's 2 documents you're going to be looking through, really. It's the application and the Appendix D, if you decide to refer to Appendix D. I don't know if now's a... Do you want to... I don't know if you guys want to talk through how the application was organized, if we want to wait till next meeting to do that, but we can talk about that now if you guys would like. It's up to you.
No, I'm not sure what would...
Brief explanation of how it's organized doesn't hurt, just so they understand.
Yep, okay. You want me to go in the table of contents?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yep. Okay, so go ahead and click on the second one, which is the application, right in the middle. And then you should get this page. Does that look the same for you? Okay, go ahead and flip your iPad 90 degrees so it looks like this, and it makes it easier to see. Then you can see the whole page. You can just flip it and place it on there if you want, just like this, so it sits. It's convenient. There you go. All right, and to go forward and back on your page, you just swipe left or right on the screen, right? So go ahead and swipe to the left, and you'll get to the table of contents. Is that what you wanted to see?
Yeah, that's probably the.
There's also, they have the cheat sheet with
And
you.
the cheat sheet with the. So the way we put this application together, and again, I'm Mike Booth from CV Mahar Engineers, and we were the ones who put this application together, is the first part of the application, section A, B, C, and D, are really the text of the application. They identify the introduction, and the project overview explains what the project is. It kind of gives you the nuts and bolts of the project, how big it is, where it's located, the sizes, some of the permitting that's gone on, kind of the background. So that's A and B. That's pretty much text reading that you would normally see in an application. When we move into section C, D, D, and the last one is, CD and I think it's E. Those are the articles that are in the ordinance, and the requirements. Section C are all the requirements that are required for submittal of this type of application by your ordinance. So C includes Yeah, C includes all the information that's required as submittal, name and address, corporate standings, kind of the background information, ownership, and a description of the project, and that's a summary of, there's a number of things in the ordinance that's asked to be put into that section of the application. That's kind of a summary, and each of so each of those things are the standards that are in, that's 24/7, those are the requirements, and there's actually text written in those sections which describe how we meet, or what the information is in there, and they refer to the various appendices, because a lot of the information is information that's put in the appendices. The same with section D. Again, that's a written summary that are the requirements of the ordinance. And what a lot of those, as you read down through that, it will reference an appendix where the documents are. An example is a location map or a boundary survey or requirements. Those actual documents are shown in the appendices. So as you read down through that, it gives you a text of what's in the application, where it is. It would probably be good to go and just read through the whole text of the application to get a feel for how it's laid out. And it would give you an idea of what the standards are and what information's in there to address the various standards. And again, there are a number of standards under each of the descriptions. It would describe what they are. There's a bunch of different parts of this application. Part of it is, the technical parts of the application of why the landfill, how it's designed and stuff like that. And then, as Dave said, a lot of the ordinance addresses issues like odor, noise, air quality, litter control, dust, and stuff like that. All that information has been put together as part of the development of this project and the design of this project. And because these are fairly complex issues, there are a number of consultants who have worked on different parts of this project. For example, we have a specialty noise consultant who's done the noise work on this site. We have a specialty visual analysis who's done the visual analysis on that site. Their reports are in the application. Same with traffic. There's a special traffic engineer who worked on the traffic parts of theirs. There's another set of engineers who worked on the gas type stuff. So all that specialty work that kind of supports this application was done by experts who have expertise in an individual field of this application. And as you read down through there, you'll find that there are references to their reports, and their reports are what make up the 7,000 pages. That's what's in all the appendices. So this is the text, basically, and that's the appendices. So that gives you how much information that supports what's in the text, and the references in the text reference the specific part of the application or the appendices where the information is. We tried to lay out the appendices so they made sense. As you work down through the document, you started with A and you went down through B, C, and D and so forth. The first appendices really deal with the DEP permitting process. There's a copy of the DEP license in there, which is about 100 pages unto its own and addresses many of the same standards that are in your ordinance. The city has reviewed this project as part of the DEP process. That information is in that Appendix A. And then what we did is the last part of what I think the Chapter 12, the standards that are applied, that are going to eventually be applied to this project, we've gone through and we've identified what the standards are in a DEP application, how they compare to the standards in your ordinance, and where there's kind of similarities between those two systems. The section, Article 4, the Chapter 12, are all the technical standards. These are the standards that the application ultimately gets ruled by. These are all the different issues that are addressed in your ordinance, and we've provided information in there as why this application meets those various standards. And so that information is included in the application. The Appendix B is really the design drawing. That's a set of fairly complicated engineering drawings that show in detail a lot of the design details in here. We've kind of included it for completeness. Attachment C is what we call miscellaneous documents. They're requirements of the ordinance, like that the individuals are in good corporate standing, resumes of the people who are involved with the project, operating service agreement, list of abutters, tax maps, kind of things that kind of go through an application and check it off for being complete. Appendix D as Jeremy said, is really kind of the meat of the issues that are involved in addressing this ordinance. What we've done is the first two parts, D1 and D2, are fairly voluminous design documents and hydrogeo documents. They're the basis for the design of this landfill. They're a basis of 10 to 15 years of study and design that's gone into this. They are in there for kind of completeness to give you an idea of what the robustness of the design of this landfill has been involved from a technical engineering and hydrogeo standpoint. The documents after that, D3 is a current site operations manual. Now, there are a lot of standards in the ordinance that address how things are going to be done, how odors are addressed, how traffic's addressed, how visual stuff is addressed. There are a lot of procedures that are followed by the landfill that are in their current site operations manual, and the same practices will be involved with the expansion. So what we did is we included the current operations manual to get an idea of how they control, how they address all these issues that are involved in the landfill. Traffic, one of the big issues is a traffic. There's a traffic exhibit. There was an original traffic study done by the consultant Gore Palmer on this project. It was reviewed by TEP. We've included the original traffic study. We have included the DOT review letter. One of the issues that has come up in the DEP process, and we worked with the town, where there were some traffic issues, and out of that came a kind of a transporter policy, which identifies a lot of the issues that people have brought up related to traffic and how those are addressed by the facility. So that's in there as an individual item. One of the things, the final item is there, is the need for a traffic study. That was an issue that we discussed with Dave during preparing this application, and I think he quizzed the members whether there was a need for a traffic study. That letter is just included in there for completeness. Appendix D, D5, D6, D7, there's issues with environmental issues such as rare and endangered species. Those are citing criteria that are also in the DEP standards, and there's a number of letters and reports that are in that. The visual assessment report is, again, a fairly detailed report that was done addressing just the visual impacts of this facility. That's D6. D7 is a sound study. That's a study that looked at what are the impacts of the area around the landfill from the sounds, how much sound the landfill will make, and how does it apply to a standard. You have a standard in your ordinance that says you have to meet a certain design noise standard during the operation of the facility. This report demonstrates how the facility meets that standard. The air license and the multi-sector general permit is a stormwater permit that is issued. Both those are issued by the DEP. Those are in there to give you an idea of how this site is regulated, what they're required to do, what's been looked at, and they're both fairly, the air license is fairly large. The multi-sector permit is an agreement that any facilities have to provide for stormwater treatment. There's a bunch of treatment requirements and monitoring in there. Leachate disposal contracts, where the leachate goes that's generated from this facility, what are the agreements in place to allow these facilities to accept the facility, and what are their licenses. That information is included in D10. And then the FAA notification is actually in your ordinance. It's a requirement. If we're within 5 miles of a landfill, we have to notify the FAA that we're going to do an expansion, and the letter to demonstrate that we've done that is what D11 is.
Within 5 miles of the airport, is that what you meant?
Yes, I'm sorry. Okay. The maps and photos, those are kind of like the boundary, the USGS. You have a bunch of requirements for USGS maps and showing a site. Those are figures, the boundary survey. It has the original boundary survey of the property that was done for the site. The site surrounding and site wetland maps show kind of how the site sits relative to the area around it, where residents are, what setbacks are, what the distance of those setbacks are. Those two figures have a lot of information that are very relevant to the discussion and under this ordinance. And then one of the other requirements is that we create this aerial photo that we show the site, and it's basically on stereo pairs. It's kind of left over before we had Google Earth, but it is what's required by the ordinance, and it's kind of something we paste together from actual aerial photos, and we show the outline of the facility on it. it's also a requirement, it was in DEP letter. One of your requirements deals with financial capacity. There's a letter in there, a letter of credit, which addresses Newsme and Casella's financial ability to fund this project, should it be approved. And then the closure funding agreement is an agreement for closure, for paying for closure and post-closure care for this facility. That's in there. The liability insurance is a requirement in your ordinance. There's also a requirement of the DEP ordinance about that they have to provide certain levels of insurance coverage for various types of liability. Those policies are in that part of the application. The cell development plans provide a description of how the facility is going to be developed over, it's a series of 4 or 5 drawings that shows how the facility is going to be developed over the period of its life. And as in our formal presentation, we'll go into more detail about that, but it gives you an idea of how the facility is going to be built, because it's not going to all be built at once. It'll be built every year when a new capacity is needed, a new cell is built. So it occurs over a period of its lifetime. The civil and criminal disclosure statement are statements that are required by your ordinance and also the DEP, and it addresses the civil and criminal records of the parties involved in the permitting process. And then the environmental monitoring plan addresses the monitoring program that's identified for the site. Now, the environmental monitoring program that's in here addresses the environmental monitoring that's going to be done for the expansion. There's also an ongoing environmental monitoring program that measures around the existing landfill. This addresses the location, the wells that are going to be put in, where they're located, what the parameters are, and it's a process that actually was a process that was worked out with DEP as part of their permitting process. But that environmental monitoring plan describes how the site is going to be monitored for environmental, groundwater, surface water, quarterly or 3 times a year sampling that occurs typically with a landfill. And then these are just a list of the various figures. You know, in section 2, there's kind of a site location map, a development map, an easy kind of 1 page that kind of summarizes, here's a development of the facility. We've included some information on what the final grading plan, when the thing's totally built out, what it will look like, the elevations, and there's descriptions in that. And then one of the issues obviously is related to odors and stuff, and we've kind of summarized some of the odor issues and odor complaints and how they've progressed over the years as Newsme has put in new, improved and put in additional procedures to address odor generation at the facility. So that's really a fairly quick kind of summary. But I guess what I would recommend is to read down through the text part of it, and when you see areas that you want to delve into and reference a different appendices, go to the appendices and then read the appendices, because they're in far more detail about what's in the written text part. There's really written texts are really summaries of the different sections, and they reference the support is in the appendices of the application. So that's a nickel tour of the application.
Jeremy, just
Yes, sir.
for the iPad here, is this searchable? Can we go from one end of it to the other? How do we do that?
It's a great question, and now we're going to get into the meat and guts of how this thing works so you guys can use it effectively. So you guys find your volume buttons. The first thing I'm going to show you is your volume buttons. They're on the top right. If you got the same way as me, the top right. Go ahead and click one direction or the other. So you can use your volume buttons to go from one page to another in case you don't want to do the swipe feature, just an FYI. Okay, so to answer your question, we're going to start. Go ahead and get to the same screen as I am, which is the first page. If you guys are everybody on the first page? All right, so we're going to start by going through and let's see, what am I going to do first? We're going to do the view feature. So there's different ways to view this document. So you see on the bottom of your screen there's 4 icons. The second one from the left says view. If you don't see it, go ahead and just hit the screen and it'll bring it up. You guys see the 4 icons? Okay, go ahead and hit the view button. This should come up for you, right? So you can choose what view you want. So let's say, all right, I want to turn this 90 degrees because I like it this way. I'm going to go facing so I have 2 pages. If you really like small font, right, you can do that. Or if you don't like the color, well, I want it darker. You can change the color, right? So you can choose how you want to view this document. You can also adjust the brightness of your screen here. So I could turn the brightness up or down. It doesn't show on there, but you see on the bottom, right? It's automatically set right now to fix the brightness based on the light levels in the room. But if you like it brighter or dimmer, that's where you go to brighten or dim your screen. So that's the way to view it at first, and you can choose whichever way you like best. There's even a feature in here that auto turns the page for you. So if you really don't want to actually flip the next page, there's a timer feature where you can actually just sit there and it'll automatically flip the pages as you're reading for you. Technology's come a long way. So the second thing we're going to do is, this is where really the meats and the guts of it are. So you got this little cheat sheet, right? I call it a cheat sheet, just in case you don't want to go back and say, where is the design report? Well, it's Appendix D. So you got it right here. Right? So you got it. I just wanted to give that to you in case you needed it. But if you hit the list button, which is the one on the left, go back to the first page and hit the list button. It should bring up something like this on the side of your screen, right? Okay, so there's 5 icons there. We're only going to use the first 3. So the second one from the left is the one we're going to hit, and it's called Outline. So in there is what we call bookmarks, if you're familiar with PDFs, to all of the relevant sections in the application. So let's say we want to go through, well, let's pick Appendix E. How's that sound? Hit the arrow on Appendix E. Don't click on Appendix E. Have you clicked on Appendix E?
I did.
Okay, so you did?
I hit the arrow.
Hit the arrow, okay. Did it open something up for you? If you
Yeah.
did hit Appendix E by accident, just go back to your list and start over again. You can, is everybody where I am, or did anybody actually hit Appendix E by
I
accident?
think I'm there.
You did, okay, so you can, if you hit Appendix E, like I'll get you how to, so we hit Appendix E by accident, brings you to Appendix E. Hit the list button again, and then hit the arrow by Appendix E, and it should bring that up, right? So there's different maps in there, so you can click on any one of those. Let's click on E3. It should bring us to the site surrounding wetlands and buffer map. Is everybody on E3 by any chance?
Yep.
Okay, good. So let's flip your iPad 90 degrees, and then go ahead and scroll over once, and you'll get this.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, now here's the cool feature about an iPad, right? You can zoom in with your fingers. By pinching, you zoom out. By spreading your fingers, you zoom in. So let's zoom in, and we can see the different features on the map, right? So you can take a look at what's going on this map in detail. And then you use your finger to move around the map, so you can find your way around the map if you want to. So that's kind of a nice feature. So let's hit the list feature. Actually, you know what? We're going to try something different. So you see in the bottom left of your screen, it says you're on page 1917 of 2149. Go ahead and hit that right where it says that. It opens up a prompt like this. You can type in whatever page you want to go to. So let's say we want to go back to page 1. Type in 1 and hit the go button on the top right of your screen. It should bring you back to page 1. So another feature, if you don't want to type it in, see the little blue dot on the bottom of the screen? Go ahead and put your finger and hold it on there and slide it back and forth. You can choose which page you want. So see, I can choose to go to, let's go to page 1051, right? Or I can choose to go back to page 1. So you can navigate your way through the document many ways. And I'm going to give you guys a chance to play around with this when you get a chance. Now, the real question is, what happens if I'm on page 1000, right, and I want to make a comment to come back to? Well, that's where this is really, really a good tool. So let's go ahead and hit that button again, where it says page 1 of 2149. Go ahead and hit that again. Right? Opens up our prompt. Let's type in page 20. We won't go very far. Let's go to page 20. All right, so we're in the actual application itself. Let me know when you guys have all gotten there if you've
Where we are, page 20?
20. You can either use a scroll if you want, but it's a big document, so it's hard to land on the exact right page.
When I hit 1 and then go, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right, so type in 20 in the bar at the top.
Okay. so
Fingers? Fingers.
On 20.
All right, so if you hit 20 and do the same thing, you can do that if you want. Get calluses on your fingers? There you go. Sometimes that happens. If you get calluses on your fingers too, that will affect the touch. All right, so say there's something important that you really like on this page. The third icon from the bottom says comment. So go ahead and hit that comment button. Some of you may get a prompt that says enter user information. Just hit the cancel button. Don't worry about that if you guys get that prompt. Most of you should not have that prompt. All right, so you get all kinds of you guys all have the icons on the bottom of the screen? Okay, so let's go with the left one, which is a comment, like a call-out box comment button. Go ahead and hit that, and it gives you a couple other buttons. So, I don't know, find any place on the screen. I'm going to do it right here. I'm going to put my comment right where it says appendices. Type in whatever you want. Right, so you go ahead and play with it. Just type whatever you want in there and hit the save button. So now you get a little orange comment box that appears, or whatever color you've chosen. On the bottom of the screen, you can choose what color you want your comment box to be, right? If you like colors. You can choose your opacity. I don't know why they have that. You can pin stuff. There's all kinds of other settings here. So when we're done with that comment, we hit the blue back button. Okay, and that'll get out of our comments. So we have a comment there. Now you say you want to do another comment. Let's say you want to underline something because you really liked what it says, or you don't like what it says, or whatever. So you hit the comment button again. You can do, there's a highlight tool, an underline tool, a strikeout tool, and all kinds of other tools. So you can choose whichever one you want. I'm going to choose the highlight tool because it's easy to see. And I'm just going to highlight a section of this right here. You can choose your highlight color if you want as well. Mine's yellow right now. Okay, so now you've got it highlighted on page 20, right? And when you're done, you can hit the checkbox to get back to regular comments. Down on the bottom of the screen, there's a little checkbox, or you can hit the back button like I mentioned earlier. Either one works.
And if you want to erase that?
If you want to erase that, click on it. Or just tap on it with your finger once, and there's an option to delete it. But I don't want you to delete it yet. Don't delete it. We're gonna play around with this to see how well this works. So go ahead and navigate back to page 1 if you can. Whether you scroll back or you type it in, whatever you do, get yourself back to page 1. And we're gonna go to, when you're there, we're gonna hit the, well, I don't know if you guys are still working. So. I know this is a lot to take in, so feel free to play with it, put comments in, do what you want, and you can't really mess it up per se because it's a PDF, right? So you can't accidentally delete anything. You just have little erroneous comments here and there that are like, what is this gibberish? That might happen, but that's okay. So go ahead and hit the list button again. Now we're on outline, right? So the third one in has a little comments bar. So go ahead and hit that. And look at that. There's the comments. So there's the comment I put on there, test of comments, and then there's my highlighted section, right? It's all right there. Now the fun part about this is, go ahead and click on it. Brings you right to the comment, right? So the great thing about this is no matter where you comment in the document, if you go back to the list and you hit your annotation section, which is that third button, shows you every single comment, every single outline you've ever made, so you can have quick access to that. And then if you click on any of those comments, it brings you right to the page where you made the comment. So you mentioned deleting it, so now let's delete those because we don't want those in there. Just tap on it. Like this one here, see there's a delete on the left, I can delete my comment. Same thing with the highlight, I can just tap on it. It brings up that little screen and I can delete that as well and clean up my document. And then if I go back to the list now, you'll see under my annotation there's nothing left. So that's a really, really useful feature. Unlike the old days where you highlighted a textbook and you'd have to remember what page you put it on, if you highlight something here, you go to there, it actually tells you what page it's on. So that can be really useful, and you guys can use that to track whatever you want to put on there as you're reading through it. There's one more feature I want to show you. So there's a bookmark feature, which you guys are probably all familiar with. So we're on page 20 now. On the top right side of your screen, there's a little, what do they call that, ribbon? I guess it's called a ribbon. You see what it looks like, a ribbon? So if you go ahead and just tap the ribbon, it turns it blue. That means you've now bookmarked that page. And so there's a separate section that tracks your bookmarks. So if you go back to the list, everything is under that list button. You'll see there's a little bookmark button on the left. You see that little scroll all the way on the left, this one? It shows you what pages you've bookmarked. So even if you don't want to put a comment in, if you just want to bookmark it. Yeah, that little one right there. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and just click it and it'll turn blue on. There you go. Oh, you accidentally scroll a page too. Just scroll back one page. There you go. So it's blue. So that means that page is bookmarked. So if you hit your list and then go to your bookmarks, it'll show you that you've bookmarked that page.
Oh, okay.
So, and from anywhere in the document, that's clickable as well. So if you want to say, well, I bookmarked something on like page 20, you can open your bookmarks and hit it and it'll bring you right to page 20, right? So that's, the cool thing is whatever you do with your bookmarks, your comments, you can go to them and it'll bring you to the document. Now this is since it's such a big document, it'll makes it easier because there is so many thousand pages to it, that having it, you know, the old days of having a dog ear, your pages are gone. You just bookmark things if you want to, or highlight things if you want to, and you can find your way back and forth. So, okay, so now we're done playing around with this. I'm gonna take the bookmark off. To take the bookmark off, just click the bookmark button again, if you're on that same page, and it'll make it not blue anymore, which means the page is no longer bookmarked, and it won't show up anymore under my bookmarks. So if you do something by accident, it's not stuck there. So, all right, so now we've kind of played with the application. Let's hit the back button, which is the one on the top left. It'll bring us back to the table of contents with, and it's saving. See, yours is spinning. It automatically saves. Don't feel like if you don't hit the save button, like the old-fashioned Microsoft Word, that you lose all your progress. It automatically saves it when you get out of it, so you're not going to lose anything if you know, and thankfully it doesn't give you the blue screen of death like the old PCs do, so you don't have to worry about that so much. So we can go right into the appendix now. Let's go ahead and click on the appendix. It's opening. So you see I got two tabs open, just like Internet Explorer now. I got the regular application and the appendix. And the same thing happens to the appendix. So you guys, how do you get to your clickable table of contents? You can go right to the list button, and again the second one over, which is your outline. It only has one item, but there's actually more items in there, right? Because you got the arrow. Anywhere there's an arrow, you hit that arrow and it opens up more items to click on. Click it, and that gives me, why is it not showing on here anymore? Oh, it doesn't actually show when oh, that's why.
It will, if
Yeah, I was
you
gonna
go
say.
out and go back in, it did the second time.
Sorry, AirPlay times out from time to time. Apple is not perfect, contrary to what some people think.
Click on Appendix D, Jeremy.
Yeah, I click on Appendix D. I'm gonna flip mine so you guys, it's like what you guys have, or doesn't matter, whatever you wanna do.
How did that,
Take a brief second for everybody to get on Appendix D.
well, I'm working on
Doesn't
it.
go to Appendix D.
Appendix B.
D. D. It's we got to go right back into. Sorry, let me get out and I'll show you guys again. I apologize for going too fast. So,
Hit the,
remember, Appendix D is not in the regular table of contents. It's in a separate document, right? That's why I want to go over Appendix D.
left.
Doesn't go to back.
So you got to hit the back arrow on the top left side of your screen.
yeah, okay,
And now,
hit that,
yep,
okay,
and it'll open it up.
and hit list.
Yeah, and Appendix D, and it comes up.
Second one, then.
Okay, there we go.
And hit the arrow to the right, and that gives you.
I got it, all right.
So we got you guys. You've gone past this already. You already got Appendix D open.
It wasn't going there, it was going to the table of contents.
Oh, I got you. So okay, where are you? Well, you got them all open. Look at you. So we're gonna cover some of these, right? So this is your expenses. All right, hit the back arrow. Right there. Okay, I'm gonna switch iPads. Why is it doing that? Is anybody else have that problem? Yeah, no, I don't know what's going on. Alright, so I'm gonna give you this one right now.
First, it's
Sure. Yeah. Don't worry, I got two spares just in case this happens. Just for now, and I'll get you I'll get that fixed here at the end. Alright, so hit the back. Use your, yeah, use your finger right there. Yep. What is it doing with you?
It's those calluses.
Now it's loading.
On that other appendix, it doesn't look.
Does everybody else have Appendix D up?
Yeah.
Working fine? I don't know what to say about yours.
need
It
an
came without a
application.
charger. Yeah, you're getting the right same thing every time. Oh no, here we go. Appendix D one. There you go.
Keep sliding on.
No,
Okay.
I think you might have the right one. We're just in the wrong page. I didn't even look to see at the bottom to see what page you on. So
Okay.
let me get yours out. See, it could even happen to people who spend weeks figuring this thing out. So don't feel
Yeah,
bad if
let's-
you get confused.
No hyperlinks.
Let's see if this thing does. Yeah, look, it's on page 2 for some. There you go. Ah,
It
yeah,
didn't work.
you got it
Now
there.
I know what to look for.
Doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. We'll get through this. All right, so you're on Appendix D1. You can do the same thing by hitting the list button, right? And that brings this screen up. If you hit the arrow, it opens up each section of the appendix that Mike described to you. And it's the same thing. There's some arrows underneath there. So if you go under D3, Operations Manual and Permits, it brings up the different sections of the Operations Manual. And you can click on any of those.
Click the list. Okay, go ahead and click the list.
Yep. Go ahead and hit your arrow.
Yeah.
And then hit the arrow there to open up D3. There you go.
Gotcha.
Yep. Okay, so you can click on any of these, and we're not going to. I mean, you guys can run your way through it. And again, you could find your way back to page 1 if you want, using the scroll on the bottom. Or you can go back to the outline and go back to the beginning where you hit the table of contents. One thing I want to mention to you, I'm going to go back to the beginning here, is that some of these table of contents don't have any color to them, but some of them do. So inside the application itself, I should have showed you this when we were in the application. I'll just show you real quickly, and you'll come across these. Inside the application itself, some of these are green, right? Green just means it's clickable. It means it's hyperlinked. It's the new blue, apparently. So if you're reading through the application, instead of going through the list feature, which you can use a list feature if you want, you can also use the table of contents and click on it and it'll bring you to a certain section. You don't have to. It's just something that the PDF does for you. You don't have to use that if you don't want to. But again, my encouragement is if you have a chance, just play with it. I mean, it's going to take you guys some time to get through it and understand. This is not we use this program because it's got the extra features. It's not just like a scroll through it. You can do comments, you can do notes and other things, and it'll find your way through it. But just spend some time going through it. And to Mike's point is the narrative portion is the most important section as far as getting through first, I think, and that'll be the easiest. And then if you want to start delving into dependencies, go for it. And again, if you have any problems with the technical nature of this, like, make sure that we're on the right pages and stuff, we'll make sure that happens. So.
Just to add that I have 3 copies of the summary that also have flash drives that you can sign out. There's 2 copies at the clerk's office and there's 2 copies at the library. So we have 7 copies if somebody from the audience wants to sign them out.
Okay. And there's 1 full printed copy.
And then 1 full printed set.
If anybody wants to see the paper version. Are there any questions or anybody have anything they want to go through again to get clear? I know I went through that quite fast. And it will take you time.
I'll have to play with it, yeah.
I think we, as you use these, again and again here, you get used to them. I've got an iPad I use for other things, but not with this program, so it was new to me.
Yep.
Although I use an iPad for my work.
Well, and that'll make it handy. Those who have experience with an iPad will have a little bit easier time picking it up.
This was all new to me, how this particular document works. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeremy. If I may, to take us through the next part of this. I think each member of the planning board received a memo that I'd sent to the city council and to the planning board. It's dated June 9. The cover sheet just talks about tonight's meeting and that, recommending that we have this kind of preliminary meeting pending a completeness determination. To be sure, so everyone understands, the code enforcement officer has reviewed the application and by letter dated June 21 has determined that it is complete under the ordinance. So that's why the process has started. It's a 180-day review period unless the parties agree to an extension. I think we're going to try to bring this in within the 180 days. But at any rate, that review period began on the date of completeness, and that's June 21. So what I've done is I prepared sort of an agenda for tonight's meeting. That's on the last page, talking about the considerations and the proposed review schedule. Let's begin, though, on consideration A1. As I mentioned earlier, there's a legislative resolve that gives this city authority to review the expansion, and the expansion only of the existing landfill. We have an ordinance, it's chapter 24, and the ordinance represents really several years, I think, of negotiation among the city, the state, and Casella as to how to approach the review of the expansion. It's limited, and there are certain issues that were raised before the Board of Environmental Protection, which may not have even been relevant there, but certainly aren't here. And those are, for example, the need for an expansion. There's already been a public benefit determination made by the state, and it was determined that there is a need and a public benefit. There's a state solid waste hierarchy. That applies in state review. That's not something that this board has to review. There were issues regarding climate change consequences, endangered species, out-of-state wastes. Those are not issues that are germane to your review. Your review is limited to the criteria in here. So there may, from time to time, be questions as to whether something that someone is offering is relevant to the application. I think in order to keep things on track, we want to make sure things stay relatively relevant to what it is that you have before you. I suggest that's something that the chair can make a determination on if asked, and I'd be glad to give counsel as needed, should those questions come about. But I think as with the Board of Environmental Protection, it would probably make sense for the chair to make rulings on relevance, as you would for any application that comes before the board. Quick question, does the planning board have general bylaws or rules of procedure?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we should have a copy of those available for all of us to review, and I'll get those from David, but.
We are usually less formal than this, but, so we might have to review some of those, but we'll try to.
It'll be part of the general learning process for all of us. But it would be a good thing to have those available for all of us to know.
Do you, I have one, I think I have one at home. Do you have one, Dave?
I'm sure the clerk's office does.
Okay, well, we.
I'll make sure we have it.
It's not something I keep folded up my shirt pocket, so we might have to get some help finding that, just to follow those procedures.
We'll make sure a copy is available for everybody to look at.
Yep.
So that's one consideration. We want to make sure that the process looks at the issues that are relevant to and germane to the ordinance that's been passed, was negotiated, that the city council adopted. It would also be appropriate, I think, for the applicants in the city to coordinate any other required reviews. The whole one idea of getting this to be a planning board function is if site plan review were needed, or something else, some other land use review were needed from this board, it could be coordinated. I think at first it was said that there would be no other permits sought. I think one thing we might want to just ask the applicant to think about, at some point there will be a relocation of the scales in the office building. I don't know if you want to wait until that time to apply for a site plan, or whether you want to now in advance.
Well, will that trigger our review, because it has to be over 1,500 square feet, I believe.
But our review for the planning board does not kick in until the approval of this. Our landfill zoning ordinance, we do nothing until this expansion is approved. Then they have to bring things to site plan.
Okay, I thought
Right
that-
now, anything they do out there does not have to go to site plan.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Okay.
So until the planning board approves this application.
Because you're saying what's out there is exempt right now.
Yep.
We can, however, if there's any way to make it more expedient, that was the idea behind it.
Yep.
Now, the planning board meets on the second Tuesday of each month. What's the date that you have as a submission deadline? So if I wanted to get something on your next agenda,
4 weeks prior.
4 weeks prior. Okay. So do you want to do that for this? I had put down just as a placeholder, provide it to Dave by noon of the preceding Wednesday, a week before. But if that isn't enough time, you tell me. You've got the application, but you'll be receiving written comments. You may be receiving updated reports, or reports from abutters or opponents.
I receive it 4 weeks ahead of time and review it.
Okay.
And then it gets sent to them.
All right.
And that's usually a week in advance.
And I take it that you're gonna send it to our usual contacts that you usually contact us with, all
Yeah.
of these comments, and then we're gonna transfer them to the,
I have no idea.
Can, Jeremy, if Dave were to have electronic documents,
Yes.
whether it's comments from neighbors, abutters, Casella, can he transmit them to board members using the iPad system?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And they can put it on their iPads if necessary, if they want.
It would all be public, it would all be open to public inspection, it's just that instead of Dave hand carrying it or mailing it or
Right.
whatever to the board members, it would go out electronically. I think that's the only difference we're talking
well,
about here.
the only thing I wanna, again, it's a technical detail. Does each of these iPads have an email address, or do we need to put this material on it from our usual email address onto?
If you want email, you're gonna have to put your email on there, yes.
Yeah, I would prefer to find another solution for that, because I don't believe that we should intertwine our personal
Right.
emails along with that.
I
And
don't- I
a
don't
lot
want
of
to.
us use our
Generic
work
address if
email.
you wanted to. Right.
So,
How do you get material to board members now?
Either
Paper.
hand delivered or mailed.
But paper?
For the meeting, we correspond through emails.
Yeah, but any documents are sent to us, and that's the way, this is the first for us.
I understand.
the easiest solution that I was thinking about is if we could have a City of Old Town email address. I don't know if that's difficult, but for this purpose, a planning board member would have one, and we would get it electronically, and we could upload if we wanted to or not. But I don't know if that's operationally efficient for you or not.
Or, any new, of course, the thing is you have to get it to us, at our,
Well, or he can set it up under planning board and since they're public documents, put anything there, and we go in and retrieve them. You can do that through Safari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all public documents.
I think we ought to come up with a procedure that works for everybody, and that's the procedure we try to use. I mean, I know there's 13 different ways to do this, if not 1,300, so.
So, Dave, how would you,
No idea.
okay, so on the City of Old Town, under planning board, you could set it up so you could have a file where you could put public documents, and we can all go in and retrieve them, just like the public would be able to. I can talk to you after and show you how to do that.
The only place we have that is our webpage.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Will you
So
be
that would
posting
work,
this?
we could set that up and.
That'd
So
be
we
posted
can-
on the webpage, and then you
Yep,
could
you
retrieve it
and you
from
can
there.
go in
And,
through
and
Safari.
then on top of that, we need to work up, okay, step by step for those of us who are, just wanna make sure we do it right. How do we go, where do we go, how do we get it on here? On our individual
She's gonna
iPads for
show
this
Dave.
process.
Yeah, I can, once he gets it set up on the webpage, it's very easy.
Yeah, well, I know it is, I just
I
wanna
have-
make sure we
You
do
know,
it the same way.
Right, we can come before the next meeting,
Yeah,
or,
But I'll tell you, I don't control the webpage, so that means there's another step that goes up to the library.
right.
You set up, we set up our own email account on iCloud.
Yeah.
And give them to Dave, and he can email it out to us.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
The only issue with setting up a webpage, that means we have to go retrieve it, we don't know if there's anything there.
Right.
The other benefit of putting it on a web page, though, is that members of the public could also go there
well,
and have access to it.
we gotta be, I mean, there's a huge amount of data here, and as we get into this process, the information's gonna be flying back and forth. I just wanna make sure we're all doing it the same way,
Right. No,
so that we're open and
appreciate
transparent.
that. And if we were to put it up on a web page, though, I assume it would be accessible by members of the public, so they would also be able to see it, and that might be a benefit, but
I think the easy solution to what Tim's talking about is, Dave, when there's new information there, you send us an email like you do currently and say, there's new information available
here's
that
where you
you'll
go to
want
get it. Yep.
review. Because we already have that established, so the
Okay.
webpage allows for public and use for planning board, and then we get an email that says there's information there, and we go in and retrieve it.
That works.
Thank you. So we'll
But
upload it
you-
to the
you-
webpage.
Who-
I'll
who-
email in you that there's new information there,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
where you go.
Who manages the city's website?
Cindy.
Okay. Well, I mean, normally, the amount of documents that we have to review for a typical application are considerably less than 7,000 pages, plus supporting documents and additional comments. So this is an unusual case, first time we've done it this way. So we're kind of learning as we go.
So, two important things. If any party then has anything to submit to the planning board for the next meeting, let's say the next meeting is in August, then the due date for materials to be submitted to Dave is 4 weeks in advance of that meeting date.
Well, that was today.
So that was today, that's right, for August. That's going to cause a little bit of a problem, because if we're going to look at this monthly,
Well, see, I think that was meant to be for an actual application. There's already an application in front of us. Additional information, we get that all the time. We get letters from the fire chief, and those things kind of get added in as we go. I mean, is that all right? Do we need the time period on material like that? That is part of the consideration of an application that is already notified.
I make no promises.
So,
It depends on the volume of it.
right, so realistically for you, because you're gonna review it before it gets loaded to the website for everyone else, what's a realistic turn for
2
you?
weeks.
Okay.
okay.
I mean, that makes more sense, I think, and
But you're not doing it.
But he's driving it, so, you know,
well, and the other thing is, you receive information, from people, abutters or people who are concerned. You're also gonna be the clearinghouse as to what actually gets on the website. I mean, there might be a few things that might not be appropriate to put on there, I'm thinking, so.
Okay, so, since this board meets on a Tuesday, it'll be noon, close of business on the Tuesday 2 weeks before the meeting. Close of
Yep.
business?
That works.
This will all be placed in basically like a procedural order for the board to adopt, for everybody to take a look at, so we'll all know what the rules of the road are here. But we're going through this step by step so that we'll all understand what the process is going to be. Meetings occur at 6 p.m. And a suggestion that I have at number 4, the planning board may want to ask speakers to, as you would, I think, for any application, to keep the comments relative to the standards in the ordinance, in this case, Chapter 24. Not to be repetitive, and to, you can set reasonable time limits. If you look out in the room and you see there are 30 people who want to speak and you have 3 hours, like you would for any other planning board hearing, you might say, please keep your comments relevant to what we have to consider. Please don't repeat what someone else before you has said, if you can help it, and 5 minutes max, or 3 minutes max, in order to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak.
In the past, and we've had some contentious meetings, the chair has tried to manage that process so that we kept it in an orderly fashion, or as orderly as we ever get around here. So I would like to reserve the right to make that determination with advice from the board at that time.
So you reserve the right to set time limits as the board
As
deems-
appropriate.
as
I'm
the
not,
board deems
I
appropriate.
think it's arbitrary to set them now, and with a group that we have, for instance, tonight, there may be more time for them to prepare their comments and
Right.
deliver them to the board.
Good. Okay, thank you. When we drop down, when we drop down to B, I've put down a proposed review schedule. Bearing in mind that we have, we can go more than 180 days, but it would be nice to try to bring this in under the 180-day limit. The idea I set out here is that we could start off with a workshop meeting, which would really be for Casella, Newsme, to present their application. There's a lot of material there. And as they did with DEP, if they could just present the application and guide you through it to explain, their perspective on it, that would be like a workshop meeting when people present their subdivision plan or their site plan for a building. You could do that. I was looking at the date, perhaps August 8, I think would be the next Tuesday meeting, and you could do that. I said 6 to 9:30. I don't know how long you'd want to take or allow for it, but those are just some guidelines.
Sure.
But that way, they could present the application and any waiver requests perhaps at that point. One question I have for the board and for the parties too, and you know, everyone out there, would you want a site visit? And if you wanted to take a site visit so that you can see where these things are that you'll be reviewing, would that be more helpful before you hold that workshop and hear the application?
Yes, it would be,
Okay.
in my opinion.
Is that something that Casella and Newsme and BGS are prepared to work on?
And the purpose of that field visit obviously would be to visit the actual boundaries of the expansion and anything pertinent to that expansion so that we could see it on site, and anything that would help us envision what the built-out expansion would look like. I think we'd want to keep it pretty focused to that, so it wouldn't be necessarily a very long field trip, but it'd be very helpful to the board and anyone else from the public that wants to attend. So we're all talking about the same thing.
Right, and this would be open to the public as well, and everybody knows it, but I'll say it anyway. A site visit is not a time for advocacy, but it is, you know, this is where such and such is and how it all works together. Any ideas for dates, times?
I think we actually have a date that would, that Don had in mind.
Well, we're actually having a public tour of the landfill for the general public on July 20th. Primary purpose of that is for anybody who's interested to actually see the landfill liner as it's being built. And if that were convenient for the planning board, we would love to have you join us for that.
So we'd be viewing the existing landfill that is permitted.
Well, the
And-
advantage, and this is on the existing landfill, the
Right.
advantage of seeing the liner as it's being
Right.
built is it's, you know, it's more real and tangible than hearing it described or seeing it on a piece of paper.
And
It's very helpful.
perhaps, I mean, as many of us have been out there, you know, numerous times, perhaps, you know, Jeremy and Tony could update us with the current state of the art. What changes have been made, you know, like some of us haven't been there in a while. I think it's been over a year since I've been out there. I think that would be helpful, just on the current landfill. These are some of the things that we're doing that are new, you know, that we've developed and improved, that sort of thing.
And also, much of what will be happening in the expansion is already what is happening in the
Correct.
existing landfill. So you can see where the expansion is going to be, but to actually see what happens on site, you can see it there with the existing facility.
I thought that as far as this particular application for expansion is concerned, that we wanted to be very focused on where that is
Yes.
on the site, you know, and keep it as focused as we could.
Yes.
So I'm a little concerned that if we're out there looking at other things, that we'd be on the existing landfill, looking at the liner going in, and then from there, we would move to the location of the new expansion, or the proposed expansion. How would that work? What time of the day are you planning to do that?
The general tour for the whole public is 5 to 7.
Okay,
So we could set something specific for the planning board?
Sure.
Because the general public would not be interested in seeing where the expansion limits are.
well, I'm interested in doing this in a very timely and concise manner. I think that would keep it clear in our heads.
So we'll have a bus specifically for the planning board and this hearing, so any general public that wants to accompany the planning board, since it will be a public hearing, specifically to this purpose, but it will be in conjunction with our
Okay, well, we'll certainly want to make it convenient for you. You've already planned this and you got it set up, so I mean, if, is that gonna work for people on the board?
It's Thursday, July 20?
At 5 PM?
Do you have a notice requirement?
We would have to provide a notice because
You
it
said
would be a
that's
public
5
meeting.
days?
If we could place a notice to, how what do you do for noticing planning board meetings generally?
1 week in advance.
Okay, and where do you notice it?
No, it's got time.
Okay, if you can do that tomorrow, that would provide the notice.
Well, it comes out on Thursdays, so I don't know
Yeah,
how
actually, it's
you
good.
can't meet that. You're not gonna meet it, it's functionally, it's not
Because
gonna
it's
work.
a week.
It would have had to have been in
A couple of days.
last Friday,
Ah,
How about the Bangor Daily?
not where we typically advertise.
but it is a paper of general circulation in the area.
So the 20th is not gonna work, or?
It will, I just.
Going
they
to
have
make
get
it work.
Yeah, they have to get it so that it's.
Okay. Now, just one other thing, for that field trip, where specifically, Tony, I'm assuming I ask you, where would you want us to meet, drive our vehicles and meet? Out there at the landfill, or?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, no, we could come pick you up here if that's easier, but,
Well, I think we drive up there all right, at least I think most of us could.
Whatever most convenient for the.
And then we'll just park along outside of the gate and then go from there?
no, you don't have to park outside of the gate. We have parking past the scale house, but there'll be people that will direct you.
Okay.
Where to
Yeah.
park.
Okay.
And so what we'll do is we'll have a bus with a sign that says, Old Town Planning Board hearing to
Meeting.
draw you in, yeah.
Please say meeting.
Okay. Meeting.
Okay. All right, and again, we just want to be very plain about this, especially for anyone else who wants to come along, as it is a public meeting, that the purpose is to examine, the procedure for constructing the new liner, as we've seen many times in the past, and any changes or updates or improvements in that process. And then where are the physical limits of the expansion, and anything else that we need to know to consider this application, and that's it. And that's what we would be there to look at. There will be no discussion or advocacy, it's purely informational. Is that right?
Full disclosure, the other public is invited for,
Yeah.
we feed them. So I don't want you to show up and say, well, we didn't realize all of this was happening.
Well, no, I
So,
understand.
mean,
There'll be this other larger public going
And I
on.
hope you appreciate also that we're trying to make it as convenient as we can for you, understanding that you're offering this already. We're not making it do it again special just for us.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right. Is that gonna work? Okay, I
Sounds
think
great.
it's done.
I have a conflict, but other than that, so.
Okay, so you may not be
I-
able to go?
Right, I won't be able to go.
Okay, all right,
Out of
well,
town.
then, I believe it is possible, certainly for one member to arrange a field trip, just to go look at it.
Better to do it all as one body or not at all.
Oh, yeah, I know.
No, just there's a court case on that one, where somebody went, because the fear is that the one person hears something different than what everybody else does, and then
I just
makes a
won't- I just
decision.
won't go.
Okay. We'll
You're
fill you
fine.
in. We can draw some pictures on here.
There'll be plenty of pictures and maps, I'm sure, so.
Well,
is it
Jim,
just-
Jim, what if we try to get another date that everyone
So
can make?
everybody can.
So like, would the 27th work?
27th won't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, we're.
Can I ask a question? Is it dissimilar to the last time? I happened to do a site visit, and it was the day you folks were putting down the liner.
How long ago was
Similar.
this?
It was several years ago.
But I think what Ted would like you to see is where the expansion's going to be.
Right. So
I
I
think it's
apologize,
important for
but
us to understand that.
I understand.
I'm thinking that this is a useful thing for us to do on the board. I'm not sure that it's mandatory
It's
that
not.
Steve go,
No, it's not.
and I don't think it will prejudice his review,
No.
so,
Well, it's just I would not encourage him to go by himself, that's all. So,
okay, well,
Jim,
we,
another alternative is the 25th, a Tuesday.
Or 24.
Or 24th, could do, Monday.
Or the 24th, a Monday.
Doesn't matter that I can't.
you may want to be there.
No, I'm
We-
not going that week.
you know, I'm around that week too, so, okay.
25 works for me. I don't,
25, yeah, it would work for me. I've got,
does it not work for you? All right, so that's out.
okay, so that's out.
Good luck getting all these people
I
on the
know,
same day.
I know.
Just, I just won't go. It's not an issue.
I think, I'm okay with that, and I think everyone else is here, you know, I think he can visualize what we're talking
When-
about.
When they show the maps and areas, you'll know where it is.
And of course,
fine.
any discussion of, if any questions you might have, you know, having not seen it, we could discuss that in a meeting and answer any questions
I
you
will
can.
grill you.
Okay, so we're on the original
July
time,
20th.
July 20th.
We're gonna stick with the 20th, at 5 PM at the gatehouse of the landfill, and we can all the rest of us can make it? Okay.
And members of the public who are here this evening have heard that, know that they are also invited to attend if they wish.
And there's a notice, there's a public
will be
notice
a-
being placed.
Right.
That makes that information available as well, but, everybody out there understand that? The 20th at 5 PM? Okay.
So that takes care of items 1 and 2. There'll be the site visit and then the workshop on August 8 when the applicant will present the full application and any waivers. And so that will be that meeting. With the board having seen the site, heard the application, I suggest it would be appropriate to then begin the public hearing to, and so this would be, you really want to hear from the public generally. You'll already have heard the complete application from NewsMe and BGS. I'd suggest that any comment they make at that point should be a summary, really, of what it is, so that anyone new to the project can hear the summary, but then you really want to be hearing members of the public. September 12th would be one possible date. That would be your first Tuesday in September. The second Tuesday in September. I don't know how many public hearings it will take to get through this. If it were tonight's group, perhaps one meeting would be enough. I suggest you might want to block out one additional Tuesday in case you have a bigger crowd. You can always cut back, but it's kind of hard to add one if you don't have that already. But these are just suggestions.
Well, I've already added the 12th then.
Okay?
I think, yeah, we can wait and see how it looks.
And if on the 10th that you don't have that many people, or you don't have enough of a public hearing crowd, you hear everybody on the 12th of September, you can start your deliberations in October.
Okay.
Once the public hearing closes, then deliberations would begin. What would the board find helpful in trying to make a decision? Let me put it this way. The Maine Board of Environmental Protection wound up drafting a 120-page decision, 117 pages. It was a long decision because it had many criteria to go through. And it received briefs, post-hearing memos, basically, from each of the parties. And it was voluminous. There were lots of pages and exhibits and not new evidence, but copies of the evidence that had been submitted that were being put in for argument. But somebody in the Attorney General's office or in the Commissioner's office had to help sit down and draft that 120-page decision, trying to figure out what the criteria were and what went with each.
Well, it's easier for us because we've got just chapter 24.
It is, and one thing that might make it easier is, I put together a decision form. It's still in draft form, so I'm not ready to send it out to everybody, but I will be shortly. But what it does is just, talk about the applicant, when the meetings were, when the notice was given, who testified, and then go through each of the criteria, and has a space for findings, and then a motion, because you'll be dealing with each of these criteria separately, and then,
And voting on each
and
one?
voting on each one.
Okay.
So, what we could, this would be your findings of fact and conclusions of law, your decision form. What we could do is ask people to submit decision forms with their findings in it. And then you can compare, you may get something different, you will get something different from opponents than you will from proponents, but at least it's in a format that addresses each standard, and you can decide which to go with. So a possibility is we get draft findings of fact and conclusions of law from the various parties based on the form. Or we could just ask them for written submissions, and of course, they'll have made their comments orally, and we'll have that as part of the record. What do you think's helpful to you in trying to come up with a decision? Which I'll help you write, but
Yeah.
I think that would make it would standardize
Yeah,
the
where the
format,
comments are
and
coming.
we're gonna go through this,
one
from
by
chapter
one.
24, all of these criteria, discuss these individually,
Right,
and accept information. Well, once we go through the public hearing, we'll get a lot of information, testimony there from both
Right.
the applicant and interested parties. And then when we begin to deliberate, we will then go through each of those standards, as I understand it.
correct.
You're going to manage that process?
I would be glad to help go through that process.
Okay,
And help
and
you
then
write the decisions
The,
piece by
the,
piece.
the deliberations that we'll go through will be a public meeting,
It will be in public.
but at that point, we will not be accepting testimony after the hearing.
Right, once you've closed the public hearing, then you're in the deliberative phase. You still can ask questions, but the public doesn't have a right to participate. They'll only respond if you call upon them.
Okay,
And you
yeah.
may decide you want to call upon them
Right.
and look through each one of these criteria one by one.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest, but I think, do you want written, I guess, maybe let me back up a little bit. DEP or BEP asked for briefs from everybody. Do you want that? Or do you think just the application and the oral testimony and the supplemental documents that come in?
And your form,
In my
we will
form.
capture whatever we discuss here.
Right.
If it gets
That
that
should be
much more
enough.
technical than that, then,
We're in trouble.
yeah, I don't think we need to be
Okay, no, I just wanted to see
sharing
what you need.
briefs, at least in my opinion, we don't.
Wanted to see what would help the board and what you would be expecting. How does that sound? I'm looking at the parties to see, we're not trying to dictate a process, but come up with something that all of us can work with. Ed?
I've got some concerns, I guess. I'm a little confused. So you would be allowed to, excuse me, I'm Ed
Ed,
Spencer.
yeah, go on right up so we can
Okay,
make
thanks.
sure we get your,
Thanks.
nice to see you, Ed.
Yeah, I'm Ed Spencer. I live out on the Kirkland Road in West Old Town. I guess I'm confused about written comments. If this is a public hearing, shouldn't be written comments be part of that?
I think what he was referring to, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
was that when we get to the point where we're deliberating, after the public hearing,
yep,
we will then consider all of the criteria in chapter 24 for the city of Old Town. We'll go through them, we will make comments, we will deliberate, we will consider all the comments from the public, from the applicant. We will have a motion and a vote on each of those findings of fact. And he was asking, do we need briefs, do we need detailed written decisions? I'm hoping that our discussion will be enough and the public record will be enough at that point. That's what I'm talking about.
okay, so for the public hearing, there.
Well, the
written
public hearing,
comments will be-
it's gonna be
okay,
wide
That
open.
was my confusion.
And we will accept, at any point, we will accept, testimony or information from concerned parties like yourself, okay, and channel it through Dave, and it will get to all of us and eventually onto these machines so that we can consider it. When we deliberate, though, we're gonna be doing that criteria by criteria, making votes on findings of fact.
Yep.
And we're not going to write a formal decision. It's gonna be votes on findings of fact according to chapter 24.
We'll be working from this decision form, which we will make available to everybody so we'll all understand what we're looking at.
Are these meetings recorded?
Yes.
Okay. I'll sit down for now. I'll get more later.
Fine, Ed, thank you.
Is this all making sense to the board?
Well, I think so. This is a little more complicated than we're used to, but I
Sure.
think we can get through it. With your help, we appreciate that.
It's going to be an iterative process. We'll be trying to work this through and make changes and adjustments as we need to, but basically then, so we're talking about a workshop meeting preceded by a site visit. We'll have one public hearing, maybe a second if needed. If not, then in October, we'll be talking about beginning the deliberation phase. Comment, written material is all fine up until we get to deliberation. Once the public hearing closes, I don't think the board wants to be receiving new material.
Unless we ask for it.
Unless you ask for it, that's right.
Anyone on the board can ask. If, sounds like we got plenty of information to consider, but there may be something specific that we need to know, that either the applicant or other concerned parties can provide.
So then, once you get through the criteria, and it may be, there are a number of criteria here. I tried to put together an outline of what the application looks like. But we'll be talking about financial and technical capacity, traffic, utilities, dust, nuisance odors, litter control, vector and bird control, waste characteristics, noise, air quality, liability insurance, existing uses and scenic character, water quality, compliance record, environmental monitoring program, hours of operations, any other ordinances that might apply that are relevant to this use, and then conditions of approval, if any. There's a lot there, so I can see this deliberation going through the findings probably taking a couple of meetings. We don't want to rush it. We want to do a good job, as always, but you know, so if it takes 2 meetings, it takes 2 meetings. But then ultimately, there would be a decision up or down after having made the findings of fact and conclusions of law and votes on each of the criteria. So that's basically, as I see it, the process. But the devil is always in the details. So
Oh, yeah.
if there are questions the board has, questions the applicant may have, if I may, Mr. Chairman, or the members of the public, this might be a good time to get those questions and concerns, comments on the table.
Okay, well, Ed, you had said you had some other comments. You want to start?
Thanks. Yeah, I have been making a little list here during the iPad demonstration. Let me see here. Okay. Mr. Katsifikis said early in the meeting that they have received their permits for expansion. Are you talking about the state?
I'm talking about the state permit.
How about the U.S. Army Corps?
I understand that's still out there.
Okay, so,
For wetlands. But the expansion, though, was issued June 1st by the board?
right,
Right.
right. And for clarification, I think I was an intervener during the BEP, and my deadline to appeal the decision expired last week. It might technically still be open because it's 30 days. It might technically still be open for non-parties. They get 40 days. But that's kind of neither here nor there. So I was also thinking, this is not necessarily in any order here, but if this is going to be a fair process, this is hard to pose questions or situations not having read like Mr. Katsifikis just found out that there are bylaws for the board.
Well, they've been published for well,
Right,
decades. I
right.
mean, we
Well-
we do have a bylaws for basically just
Right.
how we conduct our planning board meetings.
Is there a, I'm curious if there's a recusal, conflict of interest?
Yes, there is, and we've followed that. Different members have recused themselves from different applications in
yep.
the past.
Okay, and David, I will be down to find these, both chapter 24 and the bylaws. As part of this BEP process, I submitted numerous documents. Is it acceptable for the board members to access the BEP website and look at those?
I'm assuming any public information we could.
But it's not acceptable for me to come hand you a copy,
Well,
right? 'Cause
I
ex
would
parte-
prefer that we send everything through Dave as
I could do that too, I think.
and then again, remember that as Mr. Katsifikas has advised us, it has to apply with what we are able to consider, which is basically in chapter 24,
Yep.
the city's ordinance on
Yep.
generate our own landfill.
And one thing to consider, this is a separate proceeding from the Board of Environmental Protection.
Yes.
And so whatever may have been entered by Casella, NewsMe, BGS, you, others, in the Board of Environmental Protection proceeding is not automatically part of the record here. If you were going to submit something that had been submitted previously to the Board of Environmental Protection, it would be better for you to make a copy and submit it to Dave to give to the board.
Right.
Because this is a separate proceeding, and if any appeal were to be filed from this, the court would want to look at the record of what is before this body and to try to
So if you feel
backdoor
it,
that.
yeah, if you feel it's important for us, I mean,
Right.
we're trying to keep it as pertinent to what Old Town is allowed to consider.
Exactly.
And it's, it's not more stringent than what the Board of Environmental Protection consider.
Right.
It might be the same, but it's not more stringent.
As far as, let's see. So I think we got the submission deadline straightened out. Is there like an interested persons list to share submissions, or is there gonna be a website created so the public can, in other words, you get something, a submission, David Russell does, right? And then he reviews it and passes it along to you. Is there a way for the public to know when these submittals are happening and hopefully
Well, if we
share
put them on if we put them on the city's website, then,
You have access to that all the time.
Okay,
You won't be getting a personal email to let you know, though.
but just check
well, I'm just wondering, is it possible to sign up for, to put them on an email address list?
We're gonna start pushing this back to 4 weeks before the submission.
I think it's available 24/7,
On the
basically,
website.
on
Check
the
the
website.
website.
That would be
So
better.
I
You
think
just-
any interested
I know
party-
you're looking for a specific notice.
Yeah, I just thought, if, if the board's receiving new information, then it might be nice to have the public to have access to that information as
Well,
well.
we're trying to set up a way so that it's there all the time.
Right. Okay.
And,
Yep.
and I think it might be difficult for us, we'd hate to set something up like that and then forget somebody and have that be a bone of contention, so.
Mhm. Yep.
So, my advice would be, any interested parties, check the website every day.
Right.
Yep. I guess my other comment would be if the standard procedure is to notify meetings in the Penobscot Times, I think it'd still be a good idea to do that, even though it might be late. So do it in the BDN plus, because that's where people go for their, to know when you're meeting or when the city council's meeting, like that. So even if technically, they publish on Wednesdays or Thursdays, so it might be just a week before you do the site visit on July 20th, I would encourage you to keep the same procedure and the same place. And if legally, if you're required to do a notice in the BDN as well, then do that.
It's the actual day of.
It wouldn't come out till the day of.
Oh, that would be a little short.
You'd have to have it the Friday prior to.
Right.
So if I
Okay.
did it this Friday, it would come out next Thursday, which is.
This just goes to show that summer is going fast, you know. the
Yeah, it
dates are-
does.
Okay,
But what I can do, we can put it on the closed circuit, we can put it on the webpage, we can put it on Facebook.
yep. Good.
Yeah.
In lieu of the times for this one meeting.
Right.
We'll still do BDN, but,
Yep,
okay.
okay, good.
There's a notice requirement when the application rolled in, and that is that there be a public notice in the BDN and also in the Penobscot Times, as well as public notice being mailed to the abutters and to each member of the joint committee, and all of those notices were published and mailed. So that was the notice of application.
Yep.
Then there will be notice of each public meeting as,
Well, isn't there a difference, though, between, you know, the public notice requirements for an application, which have all been met, and then these subsequent meetings and field trips and all of this, is that the same requirement?
no,
I didn't think so.
no.
No, then it goes back to what we currently would do for the planning board.
Right.
The only reason we're gonna go with BDN this time is because we can't.
We get the time limit
Time,
issue, yeah.
We'll supplement that with the other meetings.
But I think what we're gonna try to do,
Yeah.
Ed, is make every effort to get the word out so that you can participate.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good,
Thank you, Ed.
thanks.
Any other questions or comments or concerns about this process? We're learning as we go as well. This is, you know, complicated. Do the applicants have any other comments or advice for us other than run for the hills?
We're all set.
Okay. All right.
So what I'll do is I'll put together a draft. It isn't really an order. I mean, we just, this is going to be the procedure, and I'll run it by you if that's all right.
Sure.
Ted, and if the chair approves, we can circulate it to all the board members for comment, but then we can get that out so that it is ready before the first workshop.
You
Does
have
that
any
make
objection?
sense?
Me approving it? I mean, it's
I think
gonna
we'd
be
all
what
like
we
to
talked
take a
about.
look at it.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, no, it'll all go out to you, but he's asking
Come to
for,
me and send it to them.
Mm-hmm. I'll send it to Dave, submit it to all of you, and then we'll take a look at it, and if it looks good, then we'll send that out as the process. And, you know, there may be changes that we need to make as we go along and all that, but at least to have the basic rules of the road down so that we all understand it.
now, what's the time frame on this, to when we need to make a decision on this, to, you can publish it? Just so
We won't publish the rules, this procedural rule. We won't publish that. We'll post it eventually, but I'll have that turned around within a week,
okay,
so you'll have a draft to respond to.
all right. Yes, sir. You wanna state your name and all that, just so we can get this on the record?
Chuck Lighthizer, just really briefly, as I'm sitting here thinking, as somebody that works 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, it's hard for me to sometimes get information at the clerk's office. Could the planning board bylaws be posted on, under the planning board web, part of the website? Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
I think I looked at them in 1998, I'm not sure.
Last updated.
Chapter 24 as well? Could you put the,
Uh,
24 is on the website.
okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was.
I think it's the only chapter of the city code that is on the website right now. That's all I have for this evening's meeting.
Okay, well, and the whole purpose of this meeting was to establish the framework, set the date for the field trip, understand how we're going to proceed, and then the next thing is to get started, so the,
Ted,
yes.
couple things. One, I don't know, we haven't been very busy as a planning board, but if there's other business that comes before us, it looks like it's gonna be pretty well dominated for August 6 months here, and so we might wanna, I don't know what Dave would think, how we're gonna handle that. We also can continue the public hearing. We don't have to wait a whole month to continue the public hearing if we wanted to have it the following week.
Have it sooner than that.
2 weeks, so that we.
Well, it's, you get advertising and.
For continuation, you don't need to advertise, do you?
Well, you still should advertise, like, well, you have to treat this as you would other proceedings, and so that would
Yeah,
be,
unless you table.
Well, I think the minimum is 2 weeks, isn't it?
What's
2
that?
weeks' notice?
For the initial one, but our planning board, we just go to the week before. So it's not a full week because it comes out on a Thursday and we
Right.
meet the following. Tuesday.
subsequent meetings are treated the same as you would your other matters.
Okay, so that, yeah, but I know, Dave, you had told me that there may be a pending application for another application for us to consider. And I think what Tim is talking about is how do we shoehorn that in to make it timely for those people?
Probably first order, approving the minutes, and then whatever's new,
And then,
move to this business.
We could, you know, the one you told me about, I don't think it would take that much time.
And I don't know if that's coming or.
Oh, it might not even come. So, well, if it does, I think Tim's concerned, and I'm sure the rest of the board feels the same way. We want to be timely in our response to other applications for site plans or what have you, then, you know, we can talk about that and figure out how to get that done. We're all volunteers, but I think we would be willing to, you know, help out if an applicant needed to have that review.
so it may be that you start this at 7 o'clock instead of 6 or whatever, and take the other matter up, or you have a special meeting.
Yeah,
As
well,
needed.
I think we're open to doing that,
Okay.
and we would want Dave to advise us as to what's coming up, because this is gonna be a long process, and
Mhm.
it seems likely that there might be something else. Don't know at this point, okay. All right, well, are there any other further questions? I mean, the purpose tonight was to just kind of get us started. And I think that now, just as point of clarification, Jeremy, these iPads belong to Casella. Okay, you obviously want them back, okay, at the end of this process. And so we're to keep these until
We're done.
this decision has been rendered. And that's my understanding, is that correct? Okay. And we can call you if we get lost. Okay, good. All right, then, there's no formal decision that needs to be made tonight, but I will request a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have motion, do we have a second? No further discussion, all in favor? We are adjourned.